Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and I do appreciate you being with me. So far, so good. Let me get rid of that, and let me double check here. Yep, okay, got that turned off. So, here we go. Good to be back with you this Tuesday, and I want to pick up on our study of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following as it correlates with Revelation chapter 20 and following. We've been having this ongoing discussion on YouTube as to whether or not the great judgment of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is the same judgment as Revelation chapter 20, 10, and following. There are some who have taken the position on YouTube claiming that Matthew chapter 25 was in AD 70. But then the judgment of Revelation chapter 20, 10, and following is something else. Evidently, it's in our future. Evidently, it's somewhat literal, which is rather ironic, it seems to me, because if you're going to take the position that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following was fulfilled in AD 70, then that's clearly hyperbolic, metaphoric, apocalyptic language that was not intended to be taken literally. So then you come to a book that we know as the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation, which tells us right up front that it's a book of signs, it's a book of figures and symbols, figurative language, and you're going to take the judgment scene of Revelation chapter 20 as somehow literal. I find that a little bit ironic. I find that more than inconsistent. But I believe there are many reasons why we can see the judgment of Revelation chapter 20 was fulfilled, number one, in the first century, in the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, and that therefore it's the same judgment as Matthew 25, 31 and following, meaning, guess what? That the millennium ended in the first century. Now, let me approach this subject in the following way. No one that I'm aware of denies that Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following depicts the judgment of Satan, the destruction of Satan, Satan being cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. And yes, I believe that's highly metaphoric language. That doesn't mean that I do not believe that Satan was a spiritual being. I just simply don't believe that he's alive anymore. I believe that his power was broken at the judgment of AD 70, which those on YouTube have admitted was AD 70. Now, to approach this subject and to discuss it, we need to discuss the identity of Babylon and the identity of Satan in the book of Revelation with this preliminary critical fact. The word Satan simply means adversary, one who opposes. Throughout Scripture, in the Old Testament, for instance, Satan is used of any adversary of God. In Isaiah 27, I believe it's used of Israel. Israel, the one that killed the martyrs. Israel, the one that had abandoned Torah. And I believe that's critical because in Isaiah 26 and 27, that old serpent, the devil, Leviathan, which is just other terms for Satan, would be destroyed in the day in which God would avenge the blood of the martyrs It would be in the day in which God would destroy the fortified city of Jerusalem, would turn the altar of the temple into chalk stones, and it would be the time it would be the time in which the people whom the Lord had created would no longer find mercy. Isaiah 27:9 and following. Now, we have to understand that promise and that description of the people whom the Lord had created not finding mercy anymore is taken directly from Deuteronomy chapter 32:28 and following. And Deuteronomy 32 is a prophecy of Israel's last days. Not about the end of time, has nothing to do with the Roman Empire. It is about Israel's last days. So here we find the prediction of the destruction of Leviathan, the devil, i.e. Satan, in Israel's last days. You follow that? If you catch that, then you know this is extremely, extremely powerful. And it would not only be in Israel's last day, it would be in the time in which God would avenge the blood of the martyrs, Isaiah 26:20 and 21. Well, when did Jesus say that all of the blood of all of the martyrs would be avenged and vindicated? Well, in the first century, in the judgment of Jerusalem. Okay, so with that preliminary bit of information, we come to the book of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 2, the Lord said to one of the churches, the devil is about to cast you into prison for 10 days. Now here's a question for everyone to ponder. Do we believe that 10 days is a literal 10 days? I've never read a commentary who believes that to be the case. Never. Not one time. Okay, so here's the devil, who is Satan, the enemy of God. And this devil is persecuting the saints. Well, let's see. Who is it in the book of Revelation that is identified as the chief persecutor of the saints? Oh, it's Babylon. Babylon is the city that killed the prophets, Revelation 16:6. It is the city where the Lord was crucified, Revelation 11, verse 8. And it is the city that was guilty, even when John wrote, of killing the apostles and the prophets of Jesus. Now here's something to ponder. Who did Jesus identify as the city that killed the prophets? O covenant Jerusalem. What is the city that Jesus said would be where he was to be crucified and guilty of his crucifixion? Jerusalem. What is the city that Jesus identified as the city to whom he was going to send his apostles and prophets, and they would be killed by that city? Jerusalem. Now, since Babylon of Revelation is the chief persecutor, she's identified as the harlot, the bride who broke covenant. So Babylon in Revelation is the great persecutor of the people of God. When we try to make Rome the great persecutor, we are stepping outside the bounds of the evidence. So let's look at this a little closer. Babylon of Revelation is the city, once again, killed the prophets. It's where the Lord was crucified. It is the city that was killing the apostles and prophets, and was filling up the measure of her sin, Revelation 17:6, and was about to be destroyed at the coming of the Lord, Revelation 18 and 19. Okay, Jesus not only said that Jerusalem was the one that killed the prophets, Matthew 21, Matthew 22, it is the city that was going to be guilty of crucifying him. It's, quote, where he was slain, outside the city, outside the gates. And it's the city that was going to kill his apostles and prophets, and in doing so, was going to fill up the measure of her sin, Matthew 23, 29 and following, and judgment was going to fall in that generation. Well, guess what? Paul, in 1 Thessalonians 2, 14 to 16, likewise identified Jerusalem as the city that killed the prophets, killed Jesus, and was now persecuting the apostles and prophets, and was filling up the measure of their sin, and judgment was about to fall. Here's a question. Upon what basis do we identify Babylon as a city different from Jerusalem when we have Jesus identifying Jerusalem as the city that did the very things that Revelation says Babylon did? How do we identify Babylon as a city different from that which Paul identified as the city doing the things that Babylon was doing and had done? See, it's not just a future tense. It's had done. Rome had never killed an Old Testament prophet. Rome is not where the Lord was crucified. So we know who the persecutor was in the book of Revelation, right? It was Babylon. Oh, but wait. Revelation chapter 12 identifies the great persecutor of the children of God as Satan. Do you see a train coming here? So in the book of Revelation, Babylon, the city that killed the prophets, it's where Jesus was slain. It's the city guilty of killing Jesus' apostles and prophets. That's Babylon. But the city persecuting, or the entity, Satan is the enemy of God persecuting the saints. Now, by personification, therefore, Babylon of Revelation is the Satan. It is the enemy. Just recently, I had people scoffing at me for suggesting that in the book of Revelation, Old Covenant Israel in Jerusalem was depicted as Satan. Well, evidently, these people had never heard of personification. And they had never made the connection. Satan means enemy. Satan means adversary. In the book of Revelation, Babylon is the enemy. Babylon is the adversary. Babylon is the persecutor. And yet, Satan is the persecutor. Personification. Just like when Jesus said to Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan." That's personification. Peter wasn't literally Satan. I don't think you would believe that, would you? So, through personification, the book of Revelation identifies Babylon, i.e. Jerusalem, as the adversary, as Satan. Okay, now to the point. When would Satan, the great persecutor, be destroyed? At the end of the millennium. Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following. Now look, folks, if it is true, and it is, of course, if it is true that Satan, the great adversary, would be destroyed at the end of the millennium, and it is true. If it's true that Satan was the persecutor of the saints in the book of Revelation, and it is true, and if it's true that the persecutor of the saints in Revelation is Babylon, i.e. Jerusalem, then it must be true that Satan in Revelation was Old Covenant Jerusalem to be destroyed at the end of the millennium. Now look, we've already established that Matthew chapter 25 is talking about AD 70 and the judgment. Okay, AD 70, Matthew chapter 25. Revelation chapter 20, the destruction of Satan, i.e. Babylon, i.e. Old Covenant Jerusalem, destroyed at the end of the millennium. I don't know how a person gets around that other than ridicule, scoffing, name calling. But ridicule is not refutation. We have more to say on this because this is really, really critical. In the meantime, don't forget, brand spanking new book. I announced it yesterday. These are the days when all things must be fulfilled. Luke chapter 21 and verse 22. This book would normally cost you $18.95 plus $4.95 shipping. But for the rest of June 2023, for the entire month of July, July 2023, U.S. orders only, okay, total delivered price, $16.95. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, a banner up at the top, order the book. You'll be absolutely stunned at the amount of evidence proving that in Luke 21:22, when Jesus, describing the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, said, "These be the days of vengeance in which all things that are written must be fulfilled," he was speaking of the time in which all prophecy, by that time, all prophecy, all of it would be fulfilled. Okay. Well, I made it through another one with my voice. It feels terrible, but hopefully, Lord willing, I'll see you on the flip side.